All right, everybody, welcome back to another Maui Athletics podcast where we go over all of the fitness and nutrition related questions you've sent us over the week. We have another good show for you set up today. A lot of good questions that we're going to be getting to. So let's hop right into this, cut all the crap out, get right to the meat and potatoes. All right, in our Mighty Networks community, the first question that comes up is there any scientific evidence that lion's mane mushrooms are beneficial for use? I went to a farmer's market and they had me buy them, and we're speaking about all of the health benefits. So, when we talk about studies that look at the benefits of these types of things, it is typically based off of supplements that isolate for a particular ingredient within the lion's mane mushroom. And so, whether or not you're going to be getting functional amounts of whatever that is in the actual food themselves is questionable. On top of the fact that lion's mane mushroom evidence is rather weak at this time. Now, that's not to say that it's not promising or that it can't be possible, but even with supplementation with higher levels of concentrated doses of what you're trying to look for, we don't really know if it's going to give a whole lot of benefits. And, some of the ones that we're seeing in the research right now, we're seeing cognitive health benefits in those that have cognitive decline. So, in the elderly, we're seeing that potentially having some lion's mane mushroom supplementation in play can help prevent some of that cognitive decline. We are seeing some anti-anxiety and depressive benefits for perimenopause and potential obesity issues. So the question is, do you fall into any of these categories? Is it going to help you? Maybe, maybe not. We don't really know. Are you going to be getting this from eating lion's mane mushrooms? Probably not, but there are certainly reasons to eat mushrooms. I mean, mushrooms provide nutrients that we enjoy and it tastes good. And so it's part of an overall healthy diet. So I recommend that this type of thing be done based off of personal preference and just the fact that you're trying to get in a good diet overall, not because you're trying to chase, any special benefits to perimenopause or to cognitive decline. Um, I think an overall diet that is rich in micronutrients can help you out there, and it's not something that you need to micromanage. What are the best techniques for improving the mind muscle connection? And is there any intra-workout drink that you would recommend? Okay, two different questions in completely different areas. Mind-muscle connection. This one is interesting because there's a lot of research that suggests that the mind-muscle connection is a real thing. What we find with it though is when you get to about 60 to 80% of your one rep max on a lift, and particularly if you go above that, and particularly for compound lifts, it doesn't seem to matter. And it doesn't seem to matter because if you're working towards really high intensities, you're probably incorporating that muscle fully anyways. Even if it's a compound lift, if you're doing something like a bench press, you're probably fully incorporating things like chest, things like triceps as main lifters. And so you don't even really need to think about this. So this is something that, according to the research, seems to be more beneficial if you're working at really submaximal loads and if you're doing an isolated movement. So if you're doing like a bicep curl for really high reps, maybe it would make sense for you to be focusing on mind muscle connection, but it probably makes more sense no matter what the rep range is to just take it in proximity to failure. And this is one of the things that we talk about when we discuss training and we discuss the things that make really big benefits as far as weight training goes. You're going to be wanting to take those lifts to in proximity to failure anyways. You're going to want to be outside of the beginner stage, 0, 1, 2 reps in reserve. And as long as you do that, you're going to be fine. So you don't really have to worry about mind muscle connection because it's going to work itself out with a properly varied program that takes things to proximity to failure. Not a big deal there. Intra-workout supplementation. The majority of people that are going into weight training sessions don't need any sort of intra-workout supplementation. There's nothing that's really going to benefit you. There are certain conditions where it can benefit you. Certain training protocols in weight training, certain endurance training protocols in cardio. And if people are interested in learning when and what to use, you can sign up for our newsletter. I've got a newsletter going out on Sunday that's covering this very thing. But the quick answer for the people that are interested in learning about this for bodybuilding, physique, and strength purposes are if your program is properly programmed, you probably don't need intra-workout supplementation. Water works just fine. All right. Moving on to the next one. I was once told by another coach that every program must include leg extensions. I realize that we don't have any leg extensions currently programmed in our current block, which makes me feel that this was opinion rather than a fact. Are you able to comment on what must be good for a leg program?
Yeah, there are no must-do exercises really for any program. A good solid leg day is going to have a some sort of squat pattern, some sort of hinge pattern, some sort of lunge pattern, whether that be like a lunge or a step up type of variation. Anything that brings you into hip extension, like hip thrusts or the glute hyperextensions that we do sometimes. And then if you're really talking glute growth and development, anything that puts you into abduction. So leg extensions are one way to extend the knee and work on quads, but any squat pattern that works on the quads is going to be just as effective. I personally do like to program leg extensions because pretty much every single gym has a leg extension machine and it's easy to just throw into a program. But would I consider them mandatory? No, not necessarily. And for the people in this group following our programming, you might not see them for a cycle or two just because we're working on other quad exercises. So I don't think that there's anything mandatory about them. They're a great exercise, but certainly not a requirement in every single leg day.
Yeah, and what they're doing to identify this, I know why some coaches say this. It doesn't work out in real life the way that they think it is. So they're saying this because they're using surface EMG data. And so what an EMG is they'll take some electrodes and they will put it on people's bodies and they'll have them do movements. And then they'll say, okay, well, which one has a higher level of activation of this EMG, which is showing a higher electrical signal? And the problem with doing it in that manner is that that doesn't necessarily tell you what is going to come from a hypertrophy standpoint. And so, as an example of this type of thing, when you're doing something like a squat on a Bosu ball, that has a higher EMG reading on the Bosu ball squat, but it's not creating as much mechanical tension. And mechanical tension is far more important for hypertrophy and growth than a higher EMG reading. Now, a leg extension is one of the best leg exercises out there. It is, just bar none, it is a great way to target the quads. And that's why we incorporate it so often. Does it need to be included in every single cycle that you ever do? No, because you're still hitting that musculature doing other movements. Keep in mind, too, that when people say, oh, this has been shown to be the best out there, typically it's only being compared to a barbell back squat. It is almost never being compared to any other movement out there. So how does it fare against like a Bulgarian? How does it fare to, a standard split squat, lunges, all these different types of things that it could be compared to? And typically we have no data on that. So making a broad sweeping claim of you always have to do this because there is data showing that it's better than X doesn't mean that it is a necessary exercise for optimal growth or progress. And so when people get really dogmatic about that, they're one focusing on some data that doesn't necessarily say what they think it's saying, and then two, they are forgetting the fact that over time you're putting multiple movements into play. So if a barbell back squat doesn't hit the rectus femoris as much as the leg extension does, you might be doing another exercise that hits the rectus femoris really well. You're going to have leg extensions in place, so that's going to take up part of that hitting the rectus femoris. And so you're not always trying to target the same technically there are five quadricep muscles. There originally people thought that there were four. That's why it's called the quads. It's actually the quints. But you're not intentionally trying to target just one quadricep muscle the entire time. You're not trying to maximize that one quadricep muscle. You're trying to hit everything. And so by focusing on just one quadricep muscle or two, because I think technically in the studies that looked at this, they said, oh, the leg extension does these two of the quads better than the barbell back squat. Well, then it's like, well, what about the other two? Do we just forget about that and only do leg extensions? So it's kind of missing the forest for the trees, and it's kind of making that assumption based off of kind of erroneous data and essentially a lack of data because we're technically only comparing it to the barbell back squat or only comparing it to the barbell back squat and the leg press because these are the only two things that they tend to do these comparisons with. They'll do like a leg press, maybe in rare instances like a hack squat, but it's usually a leg press. It's almost always a barbell back squat. And so saying it's the best exercise ever when they don't really test all of the exercises to do this type of thing is erroneous to begin with, on top of the fact that EMG data doesn't give us any direct information about hypertrophy. So it shows that a signal is better, but instability can cause signals too. Higher muscle activation can cause signals. It doesn't necessarily tell us about mechanical tension, so it's not necessarily a direct answer to this. The other thing is an important point is to understand that there is no necessary exercise unless you compete in a sport that requires that exercise. Specificity of training is a very real thing. If you want to get the best at deadlifts, you have to do deadlifts. But we don't ever have anybody that comes to us and says, I want to be the best person at leg extension that there is. That doesn't happen. And so we need to be conscious of the fact that we're changing things up over time because it gives a better variety. And we've seen that in the research, small variety over time tends to give better results. So sticking with the exact same exercises may not make sense unless they transfer specifically to a sport that you're doing. Okay. Is it okay to do cardio every day if you're lifting 4 times per week? Um, is it okay? It depends on what type of cardio you're doing. If you're doing an intensive type of cardio, it's probably going to chew into your recovery. Is it necessary? No, it's probably not. And 4 days a week of weight training plus, 4 to 7 days a week of cardio is probably a bit too much.
A lot.
And so that's something that I would consider whenever I was planning this out. But it's not something that I would technically do. You could incorporate it if it's very low intensity or very short in duration, but it's probably not going to benefit you in the way that you think it is. Any comments on that one, Beth?
Yeah, that to me sounds like doing way too much.
I mean, I just kind of think that it is time that could be better spent doing something else. If we're
Yeah.
talking about like min maxing, there's not anybody that's going to be listening to this that has all the time in the world to do everything that they ever want to do, right?
Yeah.
So you're probably not prepping your food as much as you should. You're probably not getting as many hours of sleep as you should. And
Well, I'd
that's
also like
probably,
to know like what kind of cardio are we talking about here? Are we
yeah.
talking about like high intensity interval training, which honestly, if we're being honest, you can't really do high intensity interval, true HIIT 4 times a week.
Mhm.
But if you're going super hard on all 4 of those sessions, my argument would be that means you're probably sandbagging it on your lifting because there's no way you're going to be able to recover from that type of intensity and still bring what you need to bring to your lifting. So it's going to depend on the type of cardio, intensity, duration, and also what are your goals. Like if your goals are physique oriented, I personally think that that's way too much, and your time would be better spent on prioritizing your lifting and using your cardio for cardiovascular health, which is what it should be used for.
Or anything else really
Yeah.
that's related to, fitness. Okay. So if you work out 4 or 5 consecutive days, is full body or body part split training more ideal? So 4 or 5 days a week, if we're talking about physique, 4 or 5 days a week of full body is probably too much. I know that there's some data that suggests that full body training can be used really effectively. Typically, in those studies that look at this, they have a day of rest in between the full body trainings. Can full body be set up to work 4 or 5 days? It can, but then you're probably prioritizing muscle groups on certain days. If you really want to progress well in physique, a split style training of some type is probably the best long term. Full body style training, when you look at studies that are like 8 weeks long, may be able to keep up just fine with a split style training. But over time, that's really going to start to chew into recovery and fatigue. And it's probably not going to give you the recovery that you are looking for overall for musculature. So it would be something that I would be cautious of recommending in people, particularly when we don't have studies looking at longer and longer time periods. And considering that many people, if not most, spend most of their time in a calorie deficit trying to lose body fat, which means you have decreased recovery. So, these situations where they're taking people and they're at maintenance levels of calories or higher does not necessarily apply to you. And so by making sure that you're very conscious about recovery needs and maximizing your recovery, you can do that better with a body part split. And a body part split, I want to be very clear, does not necessarily mean a bro split. I'm not saying back one day, chest one day, legs, arms one, different days. But it could be. But anytime you break up movements or musculature in a way that does not try to include everything in one day, I consider a split. So an upper lower, a push pull, PPL, all of these different things are different body part or movement splits, and they're not full body. But you can set those all up in ways that probably maximize recovery in a much better way than what you get from a full body split. Now, is there data suggesting full body splits work? Yes, there are. Does full body split type training potentially work better for performance? Yeah, it does. And it kind of depends too on like uh what performance are we talking about? I mean, um team sports tend to work better with full body splits. But you're not trying to maximize, maximal strength. You're not trying to maximize physique when you're training for a sport. So these are very different styles of training. Um, is it true that if women work out on an empty stomach that they lose muscle and not fat? This is one of those ones. I'm gonna show
Good
you,
God.
show you your head. This is one of those ones that's one of the funniest pieces of shit out there because this is those meta predator women trying to convince people that they need specific training or nutrition. And so this is one of those erroneous claims that's never been shown in humans. Men and women don't have any differences when it comes to this. If anything, women recover faster than men. And so in a practical sense, there's no difference. You don't change any training or anything like that. Um, you can work out on an empty stomach if you want to. If you choose to work out on an empty stomach, know that it is basically pure personal preference. There is some data suggesting that if you work out in a fed state, you're probably a bit stronger. And you're a bit stronger not because of the specific macronutrient composition of whatever you had. Technically, you don't have to have protein right before you train or anything like that. It's just the fact that people that are satiated tend to lift heavier. And have better performance. And so when they compare studies that equate calories but change up not the composition, the texture or so of food. And I'm thinking of one study where they gave one person, I don't remember the exact calorie content. It was equated. So it was like, let's say 100 calories of a liquid drink versus 100 calories of something that had the consistency of like oatmeal. The thing that caused a higher satiety worked better. So people felt better because they were more satiated. And so that's kind of an important thing. Now, if you tell me, hey, when I eat, I don't really like how I feel, and I prefer to train entirely fasted. Well, then that's perfectly fine, and so do that. As long as if you've been fasted for an extended period for whatever reason, maybe you got up, you went to the gym first thing in the morning, and then you're going to go about your day afterwards. It probably makes more sense to get a fueling or a meal of some kind shortly after. Okay. So your personal preference for how you feel, whether you're a man, a woman, going through menopause, whatever your astrological sign is, it just doesn't make a fucking difference. Just do whatever you like. As long as those totals by the end of the day are fine, you're gonna be completely fine. Can some protein shakes make you feel bloated? Yeah, absolutely. Protein shakes can make you feel bloated for a variety of reasons. One, what type of protein are they using? Casein is going to bloat you a lot more than like a whey isolate or a hydrolyzed whey protein. Um, what uh, what sweeteners are they using? Some people are sensitive to things like sucralose or HK or ACE-K or stevia. Certainly, if they're using uh, sugar alcohols,
Ugh.
those types of things. I mean, they really mess with you from a GI perspective. And so for many people, I've only ever seen like maybe one or two people that use that, and the reason that companies don't use that is because it wrecks your stomach. And so yeah, can protein shakes make you feel bloated? Absolutely. Particularly if you're lactose intolerant, particularly if you choose things like casein, which tend to be rougher. Egg protein tends to do it quite a bit. And so you need to be conscious of that. And if you've got any questions about that, feel free to post them up and I can talk about your specifics. But yeah, that could be your problem. Someone is trying to push the blood type diet on me. Is it really a thing? No. The blood type diet is not really a thing. In fact, the guy that wrote the book on the blood type diet no longer pushes the blood type diet. So if that would tell you anything. I mean, it's like
Gee.
the guy that invented it doesn't even believe in it. So that's really funny. And what's really hilarious is that like people still push this, not really realizing that he's given up on it. Now, what he's doing now, he's a grifter, and so what he's doing now is he's pushing the DNA based diet. And the reason that he
Right.
did that was because if he pushes the DNA based diet, he can sell tests that you need to buy so he can tell you what your DNA says. It's not based on anything either at this point. Now, will a DNA based diet be something in the future? I actually believe it will be, but we don't know enough about DNA and how that, affects like what we should eat and all that different kind of stuff. Currently, it doesn't mean anything. He switched to the DNA diet because he can sell DNA based tests. The problem with the blood type diet is people oftentimes know their blood type without having to pay him for it. So he was like, okay, well, this one's not working out. So I gotta do something that'll make me sell tests. So, and nobody's going to a random guy on the internet to get blood tests, but they'll go to him if he's got a DNA test because he's got the secrets. So,
Lovely.
yeah, I know. Should I be on a deficit after a week-long vacation or just get back on track? I mean, were you on a deficit before the vacation? Like, what are your goals? Like, all of these different things start to add in. So, um, my question would be, where do you want to go with your health, your fitness? What were you doing before? Where are we going after? Like, all of these different things weigh in. So, I can't tell you. Can you go into a deficit after a vacation? Yes, you can. Should you go into a deficit to fix problems you had from the vacation? No, I wouldn't do that.
I actually
Yeah.
think that's what this question is asking is if the person went on vacation and they know that they were not in a deficit during that time and maybe they, went a little bit too hard in the paint on some of the buffets, should they, when they come home, go into a deficit to sort of counteract that? And I agree with your answer that no, that's robbing Peter to pay Paul, essentially.
Yeah, I think that that's probably a bad way to look at it. Um, because I think that's you're kind of like pushing yourself toward an eating disorder.
Yeah, it's
Punishing
dichotomous.
yourself, yeah, punishing
Activity.
yourself for
Yeah.
something that you did, I don't think is
Yeah,
very good. If you feel that guilty after a vacation, my answer would be let's review what you did in that vacation to make you feel guilty. You need to
precisely.
change up what you did in the vacation. You don't need to change up what you do after because what you're doing, if it's instilling guilt, you're essentially saying, "Oh, well, I don't feel like I had a sense of control over the situation. I feel like I did something wrong. I feel like, there are issues with everything going on here." And so that's more telling to me than anything else. Okay. Um, is there a way to tell if you are taking in too much protein? I mean, not really, because there's no such thing as too much protein unless it is like pushing out other nutrients that you need in your diet. And protein is pretty self-limiting because people can typically only eat so much protein. Protein-containing foods are usually very satiating, and lean proteins are pretty high volume. So, is there a way to tell? No. You could always post up what you're eating and we could take a look and give you a little bit of a hint on whether it's too much or not. But if you go to mauiathletics.com and go to our blog and type in uh, optimize my protein or protein optimization, I can't remember the exact name of the article that I wrote. It actually shows you the proper protein ranges to be in. And so that can give you an idea and you can compare it to what you're taking in and then figure out if you're doing too much. This one's going to be fun. Was that whole Mel Robbins interview BS? Uh, Jordan Syatt says it is. So this person is referring to the Mel Robbins interview of Stacy Sims and whether or not it was full BS. And apparently Jordan Syatt believes that it is. I like Jordan Syatt. I think Jordan's very smart. I think that he's got a good head on his shoulders. I think that he has a general knowledge of fitness and nutrition. That's my answer. Can I eat too much Greek yogurt? I mean, this almost sounds this,
Wait, no,
this
no,
almost
no,
this
no.
almost sounds like a challenge. Can I can I
Why
eat
don't you
too?
tell them your story?
Oh, okay. So we've talked about Beth like having issues before. Let's talk about me
With
having issues.
chlorine.
So yeah, Beth craps herself, and so do I. So I'm lactose intolerant technically. Like other lactose intolerant people, I don't care. That's the only way that you can tell that somebody's actually lactose intolerant. Like if you meet somebody and they're like, I'm lactose intolerant, I can't eat,
Yeah, you still eat pizza. Like it doesn't.
then you know that they're faking it. Because a real lactose intolerant person, we're the commandos of the like food intolerance world. We don't care. And so I was really lazy one night. And so see, like your coaches, we have these same issues. Like I was really lazy one night and I was like, I don't want to cook anything. Like I just don't feel like cooking anything. And I get into these moods where I'm like, I don't want to chew anything. Like I don't want I don't want food that's going to take a lot of effort. And so then I have to reach for like liquid meals, Greek yogurts. We all get into these type of moods, and that's okay, but you do what you can do and you make adjustments. I mean, this is the same thing as like auto-regulating when you get into like workouts and something doesn't feel right, a piece of equipment is taken up, like you're a woman and you're going through part of your cycle that's making you feel like crap and you have to adjust. Like these are very valid reasons to do these types of things. And nutrition is very similar. And so there was one night where I was like, okay, well, I'm going to get some Greek yogurt. And I honestly, I probably haven't had, how many times have I had ice cream since we've even been like dating? I mean, maybe
Not much. I mean, neither of us are big ice. I'm not lactose intolerant, and ice cream messes me all the way up.
maybe
So
we've had it 4 or 5
yeah, you
times
and I really don't eat it very much.
since like 2011, 2012, maybe 4 or 5
Yeah,
times. That's it
yeah,
in all that
yeah.
time. And so I bring that up because like ice cream just absolutely destroys me. And it's so painful that like that's the one time where I don't do it. So Greek yogurt, I can usually eat if you've got like those Chobani cups from Costco, I can usually eat two and I feel fine. And I don't know what the gram amount of that is. I know that for this night, I was skipping an entire meal of like actual food, so I was like, I better compensate for this by eating more Greek yogurt. And so I had 825 grams of Greek
I
yogurt.
think you had more than that.
Did I?
I think you did.
It was one of those like tubs that were
It
supposed
was
to like,
one of
it was
the
like a
big
family
cups.
sized tub.
Yeah, from
And I
like
was like, okay, I'm just gonna eat
cans or
this.
something like
I was
that.
like, what's the thing? It's like 6 servings. What's the thing for the entire tub? And so I ate that whole thing, and I was just absolutely destroyed for so long. So can you eat too much Greek yogurt? Yes, you can. But for most people, the answer is, what is it doing for your overall calorie intake for that day? Is it causing you to be in like a massive calorie surplus when you're not trying to be in a calorie surplus? That's your answer. Is it causing you to have an entire diet based off of Greek yogurt? I mean, that's probably not good too. And this is the same thing that goes for any part of your diet. Can you fit in food? Yes, of all types. Is there a limit? Yeah, I mean, it depends on how it fits within the context of the entire diet. And certainly, if it's either displacing too much of a diet, too much nutrition that would otherwise be taken in there, or it's causing a massive calorie surplus or anything else, then that needs to be taken into account. If you lose weight by calorie deficit, can you build muscle? The way that they've worded this is weird. Can you not build muscle? Okay, so we are we are accepting that calories in, calories out is a thing. We want to be in a calorie deficit to be able to lose weight. And hopefully, if we set up the calorie deficit in the correct way, it will be mostly body fat, as little muscle as possible. Um, you can build muscle if you're in a calorie deficit. It depends on genetics. It depends on the type of training that you're doing. It depends very largely on the amount of sleep that you're getting. And it depends on how new you are to training and your current body composition. The more body fat that you have, the newer to training the more body fat that you have, the newer to training you are, the more likely you're going to build muscle in a calorie deficit. Now, it's really funny because we don't seem to have the same problems with building strength. Strength seems to build just fine in a slight calorie deficit. Muscle tends to be very finicky. And so it's going to depend really on, what are you like genetically? Will everybody gain in a calorie deficit? No, not everybody will. Are you going to be more likely to gain significantly if you're brand new to training or if you're obese? Yes, you are. So the leaner that you are, the more experienced that you are, the less that I would fuck around with this. If you are more experienced and you're much leaner, if you want to gain significant amounts of muscle, you probably need to build. And by probably, I mean you definitely need to build. If you're older, you probably need to build because as we become older, we become more anabolically resistant. And there are two ways to really counteract that outside of the things that we should be doing anyways. You should always be lifting in proximity to failure, so lifting really hard. But you can semi counteract this by raising protein, and you can semi counteract this by being in a calorie surplus. So you're going to need to put your body in a position to grow. And certainly a calorie deficit is not prime position to grow. It never is, never was. And so, if you're in any of those categories that are not perfect for growth, maybe it's time to shift your idea of what you should be doing and get into a slight calorie surplus. Do whey and creatine contribute to acidity? I've been struggling as of late. I mean, how do you know that you're struggling with acidity? Like, are we? are we having acid reflux? Because that's different than like a blood pH acidity issue. That's an issue with, maybe um, a body part that connects you know, your mouth to your stomach, and so now you potentially need surgery, or you've got something else going on. So do we have to worry about things like creatine and I was sliding back and whey to about increasing body acidity? No, you don't. You don't need to worry about that at all. Your body can regulate the acid base balance of that just fine. I mean, your stomach's pH is massively low, and your body doesn't go into acidosis regularly. So this is not a
This
big
sounds like
issue.
something from somebody that's been following those people that talk about like being alkaline and like,
Yeah.
yeah,
I mean, there are certain medical conditions where things like trying to make your body more base makes sense.
hmm
That can provide benefits. And this is the problem with some of this stuff is that when you talk to these influencers that push this type of thing, they'll show you a study. The problem is the study is not in a person like you. It's in a person that's suffering from a problem. And
yeah,
then they'll show, hey, look, if we give them, like basic water, they have all these health benefits. And it's like, yeah, because they're fucked up. You're not fucked up. And so, assuming that you have acidity problems I would ask, like, where the hell is that even coming from? Because you
yeah.
probably don't. So, okay. Um, Are frozen fruits and vegetables actually healthier than fresh? Technically, yes. Frozen fruits and vegetables are probably healthier than fresh. Um, Frozen fruits and vegetables are packaged at peak ripeness. Freezing does not hurt nutrient value in foods. And when you have fresh produce, they are typically picked a few days or a week before peak ripeness and then shipped. And so picking them before peak ripeness and shipping them is due to the fact that they need to last through shipping. They need to last on the shelves for a few days, and they need to last for a few days after they get to your house. So they're not as perfect as things that are frozen. And so this is one of those things that really kind of blows people's minds, um, because it is kind of counterintuitive that fresh fruit. I mean, unless you're literally going out there and you're picking it and you know what peak ripeness looks like, you're a trained agriculturalist. Um, Frozen's probably better from that perspective. Now, having said that, this is nitpicky. This is really splitting hairs. If you get fruit from, your local Whole Foods or grocery store, perfectly fine. I'm not saying go out and always buy frozen fruit. What I'm saying is the typical feeling that most people have is that frozen fruit is somehow inferior, and that's just not the case. From a practical health perspective, they're both going to be just fine. There's not going to be a difference that you're going to notice. So eat your fruits and veggies, you're going to be just fine. Don't worry about where it comes from, as far as frozen versus fresh, because they're technically all fresh. One is
They're
just
usually
called
a teeny bit cheaper too, often.
the frozen.
Especially here, in Hawaii. Like the frozen is actually the way to go here because it's much cheaper than actually getting fresh fruit, fresh produce from the grocery store.
I would think that that's potentially true too here, because when stuff's here, that can be sent in bulk a little bit easier than anything
hmm
else. So
hmm
that may or may not be the case in your local area,
Yeah.
but I would check into it. They're both perfectly fine.
Yeah.
Can post-workout incline treadmill be detrimental if too fast and too steep? I mean, all I'm picturing is a person being like thrown off of a treadmill because they're just going too high and too fast. I mean, can it be detrimental? Sure. I mean, what people are typically getting at when I ask a question like this is too much cardio detrimental after a workout? And the answer is sure, it could be. But if you're getting on like an incline treadmill and you're going for like a leisurely 15, 20-minute jog, it's not going to be problematic at all. Best foods to lower systemic inflammation. This is very much like the acidity basic pH question. You don't need to micromanage this type of thing because there is no single best food. I mean, technically, the best foods are fruits and veggies. Are probably the best foods to be able to do this. But again, there's no special answer to anything in fitness and nutrition. The answer is you should be doing exactly what you should be doing anyways, and we all know that we should be eating fruits and veggies. So systemic inflammation. just as background information, is not caused by any specific food. Sugar itself is not inherently inflammatory. It's not. And there are studies
Seed
showing this.
oil.
Yeah. Seed oils are definitely not inflammatory. So here's the thing. A calorie surplus can be inflammatory. So when someone's trying to scare you, they'll show you a study of sugar that creates a calorie surplus, or they'll show you a study of a seed oil that creates a calorie surplus. The calorie surplus causes you to store body fat. Body fat releases adipokines. Adipokines are signalers in the body that raise systemic inflammation. So it's actually the fact that you're getting fat that's causing the problem. Fat people have high levels of systemic inflammation. It's because of the body fat. That's what it is. And so you lose that body fat, and then all of a sudden these foods are no longer inflammatory in nature. So if you know that even sugar, so if you give sugar to a person that it's they're in a calorie deficit or they're at maintenance, it doesn't cause them to store body fat, there is no increase in inflammation. It just doesn't happen. So knowing that, you don't have to chase after anti-inflammatory foods outside of what you should be doing anyways, because you want the micronutrients from fruits and veggies. You want the fiber from fruits and veggies. You want all of the beneficial polyphenols, which are, these are some of the anti-inflammatory constituents of the food. And so, should you be eating these fruits and veggies because of inflammation? I mean, you don't have to worry about that. You know that you're doing it for a whole bunch of reasons, and that can be a good reason to push your daily servings up. Is it true that you should not consume higher doses of antioxidants close to a workout? Yes, that is true. That doesn't mean avoid fruits and veggies near your workout. That is not a high dose of antioxidants. A high dose of antioxidants, like we see in situations where if you take it too close to a workout, it actually impairs your ability to build lean muscle or improve strength, are from supplements only. It's not going to happen from eating blueberries. You're not going to be able to eat enough of them to get enough antioxidants to cause a problem.
I might be
So,
able to.
I mean, Beth might be able to. So this is a problem. This is a problem that's self-limiting,
I do
and
love me
so
a blueberry.
you don't really need to worry about this type of thing from Whole Foods. So, but anti-inflammatories otherwise. Just to point out another thing, things like NSAIDs, so like the pain relievers that you're taking could
Mhm.
cause this problem, and that's pain relievers. The NSAIDs actually impair healing too. And so, assuming that all inflammation is bad is wrong from the start. You build muscle because of the inflammatory process. It's one of the ways that you adapt to working out. And so if you blunt that process, you build less lean muscle. So the people that are consistently taking anti-inflammatories around a workout, powerlifters in particular tend to do this. They're actually lowering their ability to gain strength and build muscle.
Same for the ice bath people.
Yeah, ice bath. This is actually why ice baths screw people
Yeah.
up.
Yep.
Yeah. Um, Can running cause muscle loss specifically in the legs? Yeah, it can. Is it going to? Probably not. Very few of you are running enough to cause muscle loss in your legs, me included. You really have to kind of consider doing like endurance cardio
Yeah.
before these things really start to come into play. If you're running like 30 minutes 3 times a week, no, it's not going to cause any of that. So this is not something to worry about. Where are my keys? This, someone, someone slipped this question in. That's a good one. Thanks.
Probably where my
Um,
classes are. So
yeah.
if you find them, let me know.
Metabolic impact of severely undereating for years. It's making fat loss extra difficult. Okay, I want to stress something here. It's not the fact it's secondary to that. The eating low calories doesn't in itself lower your resting metabolic rate. The problem that you've had, particularly when you say that you've been undereating for years, is you've probably completely destroyed your lean muscle stores, which will significantly impact resting metabolic rate, and not only resting metabolic rate, but the amount of calorie burn that you have outside of resting. And so yeah, it can impact that. So severely undereating can cause issues, particularly if you're not weight training, particularly if you're not sleeping well, because you're going to chew away at your lean muscle levels, and that's going to cause a problem. So the answer is come back up to at least maintenance and then spend a lot of time, year, two, three, building lean muscle back because you were doing the wrong thing to begin with. And that can be very, very difficult for people to accept because we've spent so much time looking at loss of weight on the scale as the sign of success when that's probably not where most of us need to go.
I think this sounds like a starvation mode type of thing. But the important part to note here too is once you come back up to a maintenance or surplus, it's not like you're damaged for like years. If you've been severely under eating for years and years and years, you don't stay in that damaged state indefinitely. Like that's I think an important thing to note here because this reminds me of the conversation that we've had before about metabolic damage, reverse dieting, all that type of stuff where um once you get back up to the correct amount of calories, like you're gonna be fine. Like you don't need to worry about this impacting you for decades in the future.
Well, you're technically not damaged anyways.
Right.
The issue is that you've got a depressed RMR because you've got no metabolically
Right.
active, you've got far less metabolically active tissue.
Right.
So when you've been in a calorie deficit for so long, if we take a predictive equation, we look at your body composition, we say, hey, this person has no muscle. We compare you to a person of a similar weight and similar body composition. Your depression from the weight loss effort is probably only off between 5 and 25 kilocalories per day. And that's like a quarter of a fun-sized Snickers bar. So that's not what's throwing you off. It's the fact that you have no metabolically active tissue.
Yeah.
So what you're saying when you come back up, it's going to take time to build that lean muscle up for you to feel like you are metabolically active. You're going to continue to say, "Oh, I have a slow metabolism," or whatever it is, and that's probably a combination of the fact that you probably move very little and you have a little bit of lean muscle. But the negative impacts, like Beth was alluding to, from the metabolic adaptation that you experience, they will typically alleviate within like 2 or 3 months. I mean,
Yeah.
it's not super long. So you're going to be back to fine, but you're back to fine of someone that has no muscle.
Has no muscle. Yeah.
Right. So it's not going to alleviate in your mind until you
Right.
build that lean muscle, until you
Right.
become healthier. And so it's going to take time. You just, what her point was is very valid, and people just need to understand what's going on there because your experience may feel different, even though it isn't. Um, Fat grips, when and how to use and not use for forearm growth. So fat grips are these things that go over the bar and they actually make you grip instead of being able to grip the bar like it's regular width, you're actually gripping out wider, and so it makes you challenge your forearms a little bit more. I'm not a big fan of them. I don't really see a reason for people to be using fat grips at all. If you want to challenge your grip, why don't you do some like actual grip work? I mean, throw more deadlifts into play or like get a wrist roller or something like that and do that. Don't have your grip becoming a limiting factor on movements that you're trying to train other body parts. Put some actual grip training in there and then take advantage of that. I mean, I don't know how you feel about that, Beth, but I'm not a big fan of
Yeah.
fat grips. I mean, I think it's
I
almost
think
like
it's
you want to
gimmicky.
spend money on something because it's kind of
Yeah.
cool and nichey.
I think
Whereas
it's
like, go ahead.
I think it's gimmicky. I'd rather tell somebody to do like farmer carries or,
Yeah.
like you said, the wrist roller or something like that, versus attaching something to on an implement that if you're doing like lat pull downs with fat grips, like
Then you're just
it,
limiting your back
you're
workout.
limiting your back growth. So
Yeah.
like I'm not a fan.
Yeah, it's like, and I don't, for people that are like, well, I was able to build my grip up so like I can do, RDLs and deadlifts and I never have to use like straps or anything like that. Well, what you're telling me is that you've got a weak back.
Yeah.
This is not impressive to me.
Weak
When
back or
people are
weak
like,
glute.
"Oh, I don't need to have like straps or
Yeah.
anything like that." Okay, well, that means that your back is so weak
Yeah.
that that's your limiter. Your
Yep.
forearm should never be as strong as your glutes, your hamstrings, and your back. It shouldn't be that way. It cannot be that way. If it
Mhm.
is that way, you have a weak back, you have weak glutes, you have weak hamstrings. And so these people make this like claim as if it's this flex, and what they're telling me is that their training sucks. And I don't want anybody who like has originally thought that to feel bad. I want to point this
Yeah.
out because maybe you can suck up a little bit of pride, get some straps, your grip's not going to suffer because you only throw the straps on when your grip fails.
Yep.
Then all of a sudden you can push your back, your hamstrings, your glutes a lot more, and you're like, oh shit, I now have all of the same benefits that I had in my grip, and now I'm a lot stronger in all other areas.
Yep.
That's the issue. That's why I kind of make fun of this, because people will spend so much time being super proud of having a weak back. And you're just like,
Congratulations, you played yourself.
yeah, give me the tea. This is a guy that asked this question, which is why I think it's funny that he asked this way. Give me the tea on microwaves already. Okay, microwaves are fine. Microwaves are
Didn't somebody
technically
ask this last week? I feel like.
maybe this we got asked again. Technically, microwaves. If they did, I'll just go through this quickly. Technically, microwaves are probably the best way to cook if we're looking at nutrient loss. They cause the least amount of nutrient loss. They're not irradiating things. Like people like view them as if they're radiate like nuclear radiation or something like that. That's not how they work. So don't worry about like it somehow like leaching into your microwaves leaching into your food and then you ingesting microwaves. That's not what happens. So you're fine. And it causes the least amount of nutrient loss. So there's no big concern about, oh, this food's less healthy than something that was heated up some other way. Um, my thoughts on taurine and energy drinks. I think taurine is great. If you get cramps, I think it's great for working out in the heat. I think it's great for water balance. It has a lot of benefits, particularly for um, workouts that require extended exertion. So if you're doing like longer CrossFit WODs, if you're running, if you're playing team sports, I think taurine is a really, really good thing. Um, Preferred macro percentages during maintenance. Okay, we've talked about macro percentages before, but it's been a few weeks since we have, or a couple months. So I want to point this out again. Do not use macro percentages to set up your nutrition. It is the least accurate way to do it. No nutrition professional will set up your numbers by percentages. Percentages are very popular because it's super easy for an app to put it into play. It is not a good way to program. It is the easiest way to program. And so that's why apps use it. And so then people mistakenly think, okay, well, this is the right way to program because this app uses it. The app uses it because you don't know any different. They can give it to you and you can feel like it's doing something. The problem with percentages is they don't adjust based on your goals very well. They don't adjust based on your progress very well. They don't adjust based on your body composition very well. And so what you do is you figure out your calorie targets, you figure out your protein minimums, you figure out your fat minimums, and then you distribute the rest of your calories however you would like based on staying within the bounds of your calories. If you do that, you're going to be completely taking care of everything. Why can some people see differences training arms one times a week and others not? This could be for a wide range of reasons. One, genetics certainly has something that comes into play here. Steroid use probably comes into play for a large portion of people when they like their buddy trains once a week and he sees really good progress. He might be on steroids and you don't know about it. And programming, intensity, and sleep probably play a lot in this. There are some people that lift much more appropriately from an intensity standpoint versus other people that kind of phone in everything for their entire lives. They do 80 to 85% of what they're capable of, even though it feels like 100%, because this is what we see in the research. Most people are not pushing themselves nearly as good as they can be. And so things can feel hard, but we still have more in the tank. Now, your buddy who is actually putting in that extra effort will see significantly better progress. And it does happen that way. Um, First, losing body fat, then building muscle. When is the best time to start creatine? The best time to start creatine is yesterday. So get on it. Everybody should be on creatine. Doesn't matter if they lift, doesn't matter if they're 18 to 85. Everybody should be on creatine unless you have an allergy to it, unless you have asthma, or unless you have an autoimmune disorder that would prevent it. Recommended amount of combined EPA and DHA as a vegetarian. So this is going to be the same for everybody. So if you're not a vegetarian, still listen up. This is going to help you out. EPA and DHA are the active ingredients in omega-3 fish oils. Don't look at the omega-3 number, look at the EPA and DHA number. You want a 2-to-1 ratio, a 1-to-1 ratio or higher. 2-to-1's fine, 3-to-2's fine. of EPA to DHA, you want 2 to 5 grams of those combined daily. Um, let me see. Let's do one more. One more slide thing. How much can your metabolism adapt to lower calories? So as you become smaller from losing body fat, it's going to adapt to that. That's expected, and it can adapt very significantly to that. It can also adapt. I mean, metabolism has a bunch of different aspects to it. So when people talk about this, they are either meaning overall metabolism or they're meaning resting metabolic rate. Your non-exercise activity thermogenesis, all the movement that you do that is not exercise, adapts pretty dramatically as you lose weight. You stop moving, you stop fidgeting, you stop walking around. That can burn a lot less calories. Your resting metabolic rate changes almost nothing once you account for the changes in body weight itself. So it doesn't take hits as people believe, but how much does your metabolism adapt to lower calories? Um, it's going to be dependent mostly on the weight loss that you experience, which is going to change your resting metabolic rate based on size, and then how much you move or don't move. What joint supplement to take? I would recommend looking into boswellia, pycnogenol, and fish oil. Those are my top three. Any benefits of collagen for older women? Collagen, we've talked about a couple times. Collagen has some very hazy data out there. There's potential for skin and hair benefits. There's potential for joint benefits. Right now, the data is very weak in both of those. So, just like we've talked about before, you can certainly take it. I would not count that towards your protein minimums. You can, have extra protein through this means if you want, but most likely you're probably going to benefit far more by just using the same calories for a whey protein than anything else. Alcohol and weight loss. What's the max I can drink and still see progress? So this is probably looking at it in the wrong light to begin with. The question would be, what is the minimum that I can drink and be happy with my social life, be happy with my balance? That's how I would look at it. And I know that that almost feels restrictive, but I don't like the idea of let me challenge myself to toe that line and drink as much as I possibly can. Because if you're telling, like, essentially what we're saying subconsciously is that alcohol is what I resort to either get through life, to feel something, or to be happy. And I worry about that. I worry that people are using alcohol for the wrong reasons. I mean, certainly it can add to a social aspect of your life, but you're probably not in college. You're probably not in a frat anymore. You probably have adult friends, and I find it hard to believe that the answer is, with most of your adult friends, let's go out and get massively drunk every weekend. That's you know, how we hang out. I mean, maybe it is, but I would,
That's problematic.
yeah. I mean, that's problematic to begin with because then you're hanging out with alcoholics. But this would be something that like maybe. Um, I would start to work my number down over time. Like if you look at it and you say, okay, well, I typically drink 12 drinks every week. Well, can you do eight next week? And then see how many weeks you can hold that. And then when you feel comfortable holding eight, can you do six? And then over time, whittle that down to the least amount that you can do and still feel fine with your life and happy and everything. And certainly there are going to be some weeks where you might have some more. So maybe that says, hey, this one week I'm just not going to drink at all because I know that I'm going to be, I know that New Year's is coming up the next week. And so I'm going to be drinking a lot then. And that way you can incorporate it into your life organically rather than trying to hit a max number of drinks to see progress. Because the fewer drinks that you have, the better your progress will be.
The thinking on that is astounding to me. Like wanting to set a max upper limit. And I have clients that ask me that, what is the or whether it be alcohol or like what is the maximum number of times per week that I can go out to eat and still see progress. I'm not going to give you permission for any of this. You're an adult, you can do it whenever you want, but especially alcohol, it's a class 1 carcinogen. It literally causes cancer. So
There are no
I'm
health
never
benefits.
I'm never going to give you permission to establish a maximum tolerable dose for alcohol. Like that's something that you need to absolutely work through for health and longevity. Like never mind the physique impacts that it has, but just overall like cancer reduction. You shouldn't be binge drinking every single week.
Yeah, and unfortunately, if I recall correctly, I mean, even small numbers of drinks per week
Yes.
increase cancer risk,
Yes. Yeah, it is
pretty
it's very
significantly.
small. It's much smaller than what you think. Because I think it's like,
It's like a
is it
couple.
one drink for a woman, I think is the,
Yeah, I mean, it might be like two or three for men.
yeah,
It
like
might
it's
be less
not,
for men.
it's
I can't
very
remember.
small. It's like
Yeah.
shockingly small.
It is. It's very small. And this includes wine. Wine is not healthy.
Yeah.
I don't care who says it. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
This is one of those things that's like with the mushroom question from the beginning, where people are like, well, wine has polyphenols. Not enough to do anything. Polyphenols themselves have benefits. There's not enough in wine to give you that benefit. So it was a way for this was marketing by like wine producers to suggest that there were health benefits to it. And they would always pull like associative data. They're like, well, you know, the Italians have like less CVD than Americans and they drink a lot more wine. Well, yeah, they also walk a lot more. They eat a lot
They
more
walk a lot
vegetables.
more, they eat a lot more lean
They
protein,
eat a lot
they're
more vegetables. They eat a lot
a
more
lot more
olive
fruits
oil.
and
You know, they're
vegetables, like
yeah, I mean, so attributing it to the wine was like the dumbest shit I've ever seen. So it was really funny. All right, one last question. CLA, conjugated linoleic acid. Is CLA beneficial? So this is usually brought up because somebody reads somewhere that CLA is helpful in burning fat. The problem is that's for mice. You're not a mouse. So no, it's not. In fact, in humans, it's actually been implicated in worse glucose control. So these people that are trying to lose body fat are taking the supplement that they think is going to help them lose body fat based off of mice studies. This would be perfect for Mel Robbins. You could trick Mel Robbins into thinking that this was a really beneficial thing because she apparently accepts mice studies. So you could show somebody studies that shows that this helps, but it's in mice. And so in humans, it seems to potentially throw off glucose control. So you're actually pushing yourself towards diabetes, taking it in an effort to lose body fat. And that's really kind of like morbidly ironic that this supplement is being sold for this and potentially does the exact opposite of what it's trying to do. And so I'm picturing all these people taking CLA and being like, I'm going to get thin and then like having diabetes. And it's just like, oh
a
God,
lot of
this is,
competitors take CLA. That's like that was a big thing when I was competing, that was pushed heavily in the bro circuit was taking CLA as part of contest prep.
yeah, I remember when, I mean, in the early 2000s in particular, I remember it being a very, very big thing.
So
And
that's when I was
so,
competing, if that makes sense.
yeah. All right. Well, that's it for today. Thank you all for joining us again. If you have any questions, certainly reach out to us in our Mighty Networks community. Send me a message over Instagram or reach out to us in our Facebook group. We are more than happy to bring these questions into a future Q&A. For now, thank you so much. We'll see you next time.